There's a story of Teresa of Avila that I'm sure some of you have heard before, but I love it. So she was traveling to another convent, and on the way there was a horrible, horrible storm. And the rain was pouring down and it was flooding the pathway in which they were walking, and so that they couldn't even use the carriage to continue. So they actually had to get out of the carriage. And a lot of the nuns were fearing for their lives, and St. Teresa of Avila was leading the way. And she slipped and fell and just face planted in the mud. And she gets up, wipes her face, and then she looks up to heaven and says, "If this is how you treat your friends, no wonder you have so few." My name is Jacob Hubbard, and this is Freedom, chapter 33, brought to you by St. Thomas Aquinas in Pilot Point, Texas. Thank you guys for tuning in for another video. Please make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and share as usual. So today is another chapter where Moses is interceding on behalf of his people to the Lord. And I think something really, really significant happens in verse 11. Let's look at what that says. "Thus the Lord used to speak to Moses face to face, as a man speaks to his friend." That friendship that they had in their relationship is so beautiful. One of my friends who is a priest and who's a rector of a seminary, he says that there are two marks of a healthy seminary. There's someone always praying in the chapel, and then there's always laughter in the halls. If you can see someone praying in the chapel and you can hear laughter in the halls, you know that the seminary is thriving. I think it's the same for us in our prayer lives. I think that a lot of us believe that fun has to happen separately from the Lord, and that there's no real enjoyment in our walk or journey with the Lord. I know I believed this for a long time. Back when I was a seminarian, I remember when I was on breaks, we'd have like winter retreats, spring break, things like that, and I would go back home, and I'd wake up early, and I'd drive to Mass, and on my way to Mass, I'd pray a rosary, and I'd get there 30 minutes before Mass, and I'd pray for 30 minutes, I'd go to Mass, I'd come back, and I'd pray all the way back, and then I'd get home, and I'd go, whew. All right, now that that's done, time to enjoy the rest of my day, right? Like we get into this mentality that the spiritual life is not enjoyable, and that enjoyment has to happen outside the context of our relationship with God. But we talked about how God himself is the fulfillment of all good desires. And fun is a part of that. Like, our relationship with God is supposed to be fun. I think a lot of us take ourselves too seriously in our prayer lives, and we don't have that openness, that fun, that looseness that the Lord desires to have with us. Now, do I mean that we need to be disrespecting God? No, never, right? Like, God is so set apart from us and so holy and amazing that we should not, blaspheme him. But, I mean, we can be funny with him. We can joke with him. We can even, make biting remarks with him, just like St. Teresa of Avila did, as long as we have that backdrop of trust with him, right? And let's look at Jesus' own life. Don't you think that he had a lot of fun? We only get a glimpse of the last 3 years of his life, and we get tiny little pieces of information. But there's basically 30 years that we just don't know anything about. Don't you think he was just having a ton of fun during those years? That he was able to goof off, to joke with people, to have a playful relationship with his parents and with his friends as a kid, right? Like, the Lord, he experiences fun, and he is the source of all fun, and he wants that relationship of fun with us even as well. And let's look at his relationship with the apostles. We don't see all of it. We only see the intense moments. But there's a lot of moments in between where I'm sure they goofed off. I'm sure they were just regular guys together to some degree. I mean, the apostles, they weren't like these high, stuck-up, high priests or things like that, like the Sadducees and the Pharisees, who were all very concerned with their outward appearances. They were fishermen. They knew they were sinners. They were tax collectors. They were just normal people. And the Lord chose those, the normal people, not people who took themselves too seriously, right? And Jesus is always telling parables. And what are parables oriented toward? Relationship, right? He wants us to be invited into a relationship with him through the word that he gives. It's kind of confusing, and we talked about that before. A lot of times parables don't really make sense because he's inviting us not into finding the right answer, but into finding him as the answer. It's like going to him and talking with him about it. He wants us to talk with him, to have a conversation, to just continue doing that, right? I have an awesome friend who's always reminding me that I should be asking the Lord for a good bedtime story every time I go to bed, We need more of that kind of thinking, though. We need to think that the Lord wants to have fun with us, that he wants to excite us, to bring us joy, to make us laugh, right? And like, I'm trying to embrace this own spirituality in my own life. And I can't lie, it's kind of hard because I am a pretty serious person. And I'm pretty intense. And so this playful side, it is a little difficult, but it's been so beautiful. I've seen so much growth in my spirituality from it and felt like so much pressure being released where I want to be in the Lord's presence. And so the way that I primarily do this is just every single day when there are things that come up, that like either frustrate me or that are blessings, rather than going to someone else to talk about them first, I just spend some time talking to the Lord. And that can be out loud or it can be just inside my head and we'll just have a conversation about it. And so he's the one that I go to first about everything. And what I find is that it transforms a lot of those moments, especially the frustrating moments of my day, into joyful moments instead, because we can laugh about it together, Like, it's not some sort of very serious thing where it's like, oh my gosh, I need to figure this out. It's like, you're in control. You got me. And we're just going to enjoy this weird moment together, And I think that's kind of what the Lord wants to do with us. He wants us to enjoy every single moment with him, not always be so intense, because he made us entirely for himself, not just like our most pious parts, but also our fun parts. Like, he wants all of us. So how do we treat God's presence and our own prayer? Is it a burden? Is it a responsibility? Is it something that we have to do that almost like weighs on our hearts? Or is it something that we want to do, that we desire? And not just for the sake of our sanctification, but for the sake of entering into a relationship with God, who loves us so dearly and so intimately, better than any person could even begin to love us. And so today's challenge is to invite the Lord into something that you usually don't invite him into. Whether that be like your morning drive when you're stuck in traffic, or when you're at work, something frustrating happens, or like you get mad, you lose your keys, just any little thing throughout the day where usually you kind of just remain in your own head and have this internal dialogue. Have that dialogue with the Lord instead. And I believe that in beginning that practice, you'll see that there's so much joy waiting for you there, and that the Lord really wants to encounter you in the simple. Thank you guys. Have a wonderful day.